Hi, my name is Jim Westfall. In this video, we'll be making a rustic herb and olive sourdough bread. Now, sourdough bread is not that hard to do, but it does take a little bit of practice. I'm not an expert. I've done a few loaves. I've only been baking for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now, in this video, we're going to break it into 2 days. The first day we'll be developing the dough, and the second day we'll be baking the bread. I hope you enjoy this video. Good luck, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Okay, here's the recipe with the amounts for our rustic herb and olive sourdough bread. I'm going to be using 80% all-purpose white flour and 20% whole grain wheat flour. Good morning. The first step in our dough development for day 1 is to feed our starter. Now I've added 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour to this. I've got a large starter. You'll add less if you have a smaller starter, but the key is they need to be equal amounts. All right, it's been about 3 hours, and so I've mixed up our dry ingredients, the white and the wheat flour, as well as the salt and the Italian herbs. Okay, now I'm going to pour this water that I've already pre-measured into our bowl with the dry ingredients so we can start mixing our dough. Now this is a little bit messy, so I'm going to use one of these plastic paddles. It's kind of nice. It's a dough knife on one side and a nice scraper for the bowl on this side. I'm going to wet everything, wet my hands and wet this paddle before I get started, and then we'll mix up the dough. And all I do is reach in here and start carefully blending these ingredients with the water. And this will take 2 or 3 minutes to carefully do it. Now I'm always a little bit careful because it's quite easy to make a big mess at this point. So just go slow and mix it completely up. Okay, I've got the dough mixed really well with the water, and the next thing we're going to do is add the starter. But we got to let this rest and hydrate for at least an hour, or maybe longer, depending on when the starter is ready. Okay, it's been about an hour and a half now, and the starter's looking good. And so we're going to go ahead and set our bowl on top of the scale. And then we're going to just go ahead and pour 180 grams into this batch. All nice and bubbly. All right, that's about 180 grams. And then we'll set that aside. And set our scale aside. Now I'm going to be using my hands to mix this portion of it. This is the messiest portion. So the first thing I'll do is wet my hands so the dough doesn't stick as much. And then I'm going to work the starter into the dough by first kind of pushing holes into the dough and then just kind of working it and mixing it together. This is a good time to get in any lumps and bumps that are in there and really feel the dough and mix it up. Now, this is going to take a few minutes, and because we're doing an olive loaf, once I get the starter mixed into here, I'll add the olives and also mix those in. I'll give it a good couple of minutes of, looks like I'm massaging this dough, but you can see it's really sticky, and this is the stickiest portion of the whole process right here. It's been about 30 minutes, and so now the next step is to do the stretch and fold. We're going to do 4 stretch and folds in 30-minute intervals. So the first thing, wet your hands, and I'm going to use this paddle for this. And we'll peel back the plastic. Now I'm going to use a paddle on this, but one of the other techniques that they show, and there's a lot of other techniques in the video, where you reach down with just your hands and you pull it up. And then you turn it 90 degrees and do the same thing. Watch, I'll do it with the paddle. It's a little easier. I like it. I like easy. And so you reach in and you pull it up and you fold it over. You reach in, you stretch it and fold it over. You reach in, you stretch it and you fold it over. You reach in and you stretch it and you fold it over. You reach in and you stretch it and you fold it over. I'll do a couple more. You reach in, stretch it, and fold it over until you get where you started. That's all you need to do. I'll do a couple more just to show you quickly. Now, we'll let that rest for 30 minutes with the plastic on it, and then we'll come back and do it again. Again, this is the first of 4 times, and I'll come back at the end, and I'll show you what the dough looks like then. You can see that the olives are totally mixed in here, and that's where we are. I finished my 4th stretch and fold, 20 minutes or so ago, so I just wanted to show you how different the dough is now from when we started. If you just reach in, you can see that it's very stretchy and holds together pretty well. Now, this is all part of the fermentation process, and the stretch and fold actually helps the bonds develop in the dough. Now, since we have a lot of the Italian herbs and the olives in this, it's not going to hold as well if you try to do what they call a window pane test. It's a little tougher to do, but you can tell the difference over time, and you'll feel it as you do the stretch and folds. I'm going to put a reference here of where the dough is just hitting on this bowl with this masking tape, so I have a reference for later. So what I'm going to do is cover it now, and now we're just going to let it ferment. It's here on the counter at room temperature. It's about 72 in here, so I think this is going to take maybe 6 or 8 hours to finish this bulk fermentation. The dough should rise up. We should at least see it get up above the tape here, and then we'll go on to the next step in the process. It's been about 8 hours, and the dough's risen considerably in our bowl, and there's lots of bubbles, so it's pretty obvious this is ready. So we want to go ahead and flour the counter that we're going to work on here. And we're going to pull the dough out, and then we're going to do a little shaping. So let's get... All right. Oh yeah, that's looking good. We want to go ahead and flour the dough so that it doesn't stick to our hands, and it needs to be floured so that it doesn't stick to the baskets when we go to put it in the baskets. All right, now we're going to cut the dough into 2 pieces. Carefully here. Get her apart. Start shaping the dough. Okay. And basically here we just want to get it into a shape that's going to go into our baskets. We're going to knock some of the air out of it. I don't like to... Okay. this guy to shape up a little bit. Trying to get it in a nice kind of ball. I guess I will knock a little bit of the air out of the dough here. Make sure you have plenty of flour on the outside of this. It's not going to be in the bread. It's just to keep the bread from sticking to my hand and also from sticking to our baskets. Okay, those look pretty good. Now, our proofing baskets, I've already floured them. You want to make sure that they're a good amount of flour in them so they don't stick. I've got two. I've got a long one and I've got one that's round. And so all we need to do is kind of carefully scoop up the dough and flip it in the basket. And then I'm going to kind of pinch the bottom together so it's a more uniform surface, and it should just stitch together and stick. We should be able to get it to stick okay. This isn't that critical, but it makes it nicer. That one looks okay. And then we'll do the same with this guy. Kind of shape him so he's a little longer. And then we're going to take them and flip them right in there. And then stitch them together. That looks pretty good. And got a little air. You might want to put a little flour on the side just so it doesn't stick. Okay. And that one looks good. Let's put a little bit more flour around outside of this one. That one looks good. Those two are ready. What we're going to do now is we're going to put these in the refrigerator overnight. Good morning. And it's bake day. This morning I just want to start by talking a little bit about our oven and our temperatures and what we're going to bake in. So you want to preheat your oven at 500 degrees with your Dutch oven inside. We'll be using a Dutch oven. You know, it has a lid on it. To keep the moisture in so the bread steams while it's rising, keeps the bread soft enough so it'll create a big spring. Now I want to show you the Dutch oven. I've got a large Dutch oven. It's a 12 quart. It's a little overkill, but it's just what I had. You could get away with maybe an 8 quart, depending on your bread size. And if you have a little smaller one, you might get away getting, well, it would be nice, you could get a couple in here so you could do 2 loaves. But this will allow us to do a pretty big loaf. I just have to do the 2 loaves we have in series. The first one and then the second one. Again, 500 degrees for an hour. Once you got it preheated for an hour, then you can start the next step, which is transferring the dough and getting it into the oven. We're going to transfer the bread onto a piece of parchment paper. Now I've gotten the bread out of the fridge and you can see it's pretty consistent. It's really cold now, and I've cut the parchment paper corners, and then we're just going to try to center that on the loaf and flip it, roll it over slowly and onto the counter. And then carefully lift the basket off. And great, nothing stuck. That'll work well. Any real excess flour you can kind of push off, but it's not too bad. And like I say, that's on the outside of the bread. Now I'm going to use a bread blade. It's basically a razor blade on a stick. You can put a razor blade on a chopstick for this. Called the bread lame. Lame is the French word for blade. We're going to put a cross cut in the top of this so that it doesn't explode. Let's go like that. I'm just going to follow the seams of the bread basket here. You want to get a good cut in there. See, that's nice. Okay, now we're ready to put it in the oven. So first, open up your oven. Pull it out so you can get at it. Get your lid off. Careful, all of this stuff is real hot. And now, get your bread and just lift it with your parchment paper and put it right in there. Make sure the parchment paper is away from the bread. It'll expand a little bit and it's centered. And then carefully grab your lid again. Again, it's hot. Put it on, close the oven, and now set your timer for 30 minutes, and 30 minutes we'll be back to see what it looks like. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. So now we're going to have a look at what the bread is like. Hopefully it hasn't exploded. So let's open her up and have a look. Carefully take this lid off. All right. What do you think of it? That looks pretty good. Now, it's not quite as brown as we'd like it, so we're going to leave the lid off. We're going to push her back into the oven, and we're going to let it bake for a few more minutes while we're watching it. And once it gets to kind of the brownness we like, then we'll pull it out. Okay, it's been a couple of minutes. Just take a look and see how the bread is doing. Okay, that looks pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to transfer that loaf out of the Dutch oven and onto the cooling rack. Now I'm going to do this hot transfer with my fingers. You got to be quick. Bread's kind of hot, but it's doable. So here we go. All right, in about 2 hours, we'll cut into this loaf and see how it looks. It's been about 2 hours since I pulled this loaf out of the oven. It looks pretty good. Just cut into it. There's a reasonable amount of air holes. I think the crumb is going to be good. There's quite a bit of herbs in here. You can see there's plenty of olives. I think this is really going to be a yummy loaf. I hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck, stay calm, and bake on.